This week, Drake surpassed the Beatles for the most top 10 hits in any given year. He's got, I believe, 12 now. Most of those have been Drake songs, and a few of those have been features. So he surpassed a record that the Beatles had held for 50-something years. Props to Drake. I'm a huge Drake fan. But let's be clear on this. It's apples and oranges when you're comparing Billboard performance now versus then. What I mean by that is, it makes it tough to compare during the streaming era. And why is that? When people used to drop singles, they used to package the single. Back in the days in the Beatles era, it was a vinyl. They would actually issue out a hard copy vinyl. It would have an A-side and a B-side. That would be the single. And people would have to go to the store, buy the single. So we've gone through a whole bunch of eras since then. We had the tape and CD era. We had the Apple iTunes era. We had the bootleg and Napster era before that, which pretty much changed the game from then on. So now we're in the streaming era with Spotify, Amazon Music, and so forth. So whereas before, an artist would drop an album, say the album has 15 songs. Let's take All Eyes on Me, classic hip hop album from Tupac. All Eyes on Me drops, and he released one single which had an A-side, How Do You Want It? Then it had California Love, one of the two versions. There were two versions of California Love. Same lyrics, different beats, both by Dre. And that How Do You Want It single also had two of America's Most Wanted. Ain't Nothing But a Gangsta Party, Party. It also had Hit 'Em Up. So it had 4 tracks on it. How Do You Want It, two of America's Most Wanted, California Love, Hit 'Em Up. He got credit for one single hitting #1 with that issue, because singles were packaged in a way where there was financial investment from the label side to even issue this as a single and present it to the consumers as a single. It had a CD cover, a CD back, and all that. So again, you've got 3, maybe 4, but let's say 3 hip-hop classics. Hit 'Em Up. I mean, it's got 4 classics on it. I mean, Hit 'Em Up wouldn't have gone one as a single regardless. It was a diss track, but damn, I mean, in the history of diss tracks, that was a hell of a diss track. It's one of the most brutal diss tracks ever. Back to the point. A classic album issued one single, and a lot of great albums only had 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, but usually 1 or 2 singles. And the first single, the lead single, would usually far outperform the second single. Why? Because you would drop the single, drop the album, and then by the time you issue the second single, the album's already been out for long enough to where there's not as much interest in buying the second single, unless you want the instrumental version, because you couldn't just go to YouTube and download an instrumental. You would have to get the single to get the instrumental. So if you were like a DJ or just a record collecting junkie who likes having a lot of instrumentals, or just a music enthusiast, you could get the vinyl, to have the single, or to have the remix of the song, which might have only been issued on that single. So again, artist drops a hell of an album. It could go triple platinum, quadruple platinum, but it only issued 2 singles. So at most, that artist is getting 2 songs in the top 10. And in the case of Pac, he put the 2 other most popular songs on the back of the How Do You Want It single and issued it all as one single. So again, 3 classics, maybe 4, credited for 1 #1 hit single. Fast forward to now, in the streaming era, when somebody like Drake releases an album, in this case Scorpion, a double album with like 24 songs. All Eyes on Me by Pac was also a double album. So Drake drops it, and it's available on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever streaming service. So the person streams the album. They don't even have to purchase an album. They stream the album. And say they play all 24 songs. They listen to the whole album through, where a certain amount of streams eventually equals 1 album sale. But if you listen to the entire album, tracks 1 through 24, you also just micro-purchased those singles. So if that album's B-side songs, the non-singles, or the songs that wouldn't necessarily be singles, let's pick out what would be the singles of Scorpion. It would be God's Plan, Nice for What, In My Feelings, maybe Nonstop, and maybe later on the one with Michael Jackson. All right, let's just say those are the singles. Before, if he would have released 3, 4 of those, only those songs have a chance of cracking the top 10 or top 1 or top 20, whatever, on Billboard. But now, since people are streaming the album, if they listen to the whole album through, they just micro-purchased the non-singles as much as they micro-purchased the actual single. So if that album gets enough listens, all songs then qualify to slowly get elevated with listens and more streams. Again, not one purchase, just a bunch of streams. They purchased a streaming service, which gives them access to the streams. So just listening to the music for free, you can already outpace and out-total the singles for other artists. So you could potentially have all of the songs on your album hit the Billboard 200 or crack the top 50 if that album gets enough listens from enough listeners, enough streams. Again, non-purchases, but that are going towards a streaming total, which will eventually equal a bunch of sales on these non-single singles. So you get why it's tough to compare Drake's accomplishment with what the Beatles did back when singles had to actually be issued as a singular single. That's why they call it a single, to break a singles record. So again, extremely great accomplishment, but it's happening more and more where a very popular artist drops an album, and just because it's a popular artist that's gonna get a whole bunch of streams and a whole bunch of people to just listen to the stuff who don't have to make the same investment on the album, they don't have to go out and buy the album, contributing to the overall total of the sales of these singles. Let's just call them songs, because they're not even really singles anymore, right? So that's the difference between what the Beatles did and what Drake's doing now, and what somebody, maybe Drake again later on, is likely to top at some point pretty soon, because the whole game has really changed. Now that you've got the streams, again, there's not the same investment needed from the consumer to contribute towards the singles totals or the album sales totals, because a stream is a micro purchase in a sense. You're not actually putting your money down, but because of the way they're now factoring the streams in towards album sales, that tilts the whole thing, and it's going to tilt it even more as streams further dominate the market over actual album sales.